The Banner Saga 3 brings its caravan of weary warriors to the end of a long road, trying to escape the end of the world. As the final chapter of this Viking-inspired tale, there aren't too many departures from the established framework, but it does offer a few new elements to experiment with. More than anything, though, it provides fitting revelations and resolutions, while putting players in a desperate race against time.
We were as far from safety as we could have been. Me, Rook, and Alette.
As the final chapter of a continuous tale, jumping into the Banner Saga 3 without playing the first two games isn't recommended. You don't need to have your previous saves on hand, but if you do, you can import the file to carry over progress and decisions before you start. If your memory of past events is a little hazy, there's a recap video to brush you up on the story, as well as a combat tutorial. The basic framework of the third game continues to alternate between turn-based combat and story scenarios in which you have to make decisions with lasting effects. The key difference in the Banner Saga 3 is that you're also hopping between two very different groups from the start. The main caravan is trying to defend the last surviving city from an encroaching wall of darkness consuming the world. Meanwhile, a smaller band, led by wizard-like Valka, are pressing into that darkness, protected by a bubble of light, on a quest to stop the threat at its source.
The old city on the human-world border looms ahead. Twisted into a claw, but still strand.
All of this is presented with lush illustrations depicting the massive broken world in intricate detail and large character portraits during conversations. As an independent title with a small budget, much of the game is portrayed in more of a visual novel style, but some of the most important scenes feature full animation and a touch of voice work. The series wouldn't be the same without the music of Austin Wintory, and here, the pounding drums, clashing metallic percussion, and somber horns do much to amplify the forces relentlessly closing in on you, and the fatigue of warriors continuing on unto the last. The turn-based combat has its own characteristic distinctions as you manage points for both armor and strength for each unit. Since healing is very limited, any mistake can be costly, but injured soldiers can come back to fight another day. It's your choices in the story that ultimately determine which specific characters you'll gain or lose. Much of the emphasis is placed on positioning and range, encouraging you to take advantage of each unit's individual abilities. Spearmen can impale units and knock them back, causing enemies to bleed as they walk, and some of the horseborne characters can rush in from great distances to trample enemies. Playable dredge units are very limited, but it's great to have them as a more regular part of the ranks. It's satisfying to finally use dredge abilities that have made them a thorn in your side as enemies in the past two games. There's also a witch who joins one party, and she has an extremely useful teleport attack that keeps her out of harm's way. Meanwhile, one of the Valka, Juno, can now survive death, gathering dark energy on the battlefield as a ghost, then reviving with restored strength and willpower. Battles in the city often play out similarly to the past two games, with kills granting additional willpower used for special abilities. However, in the darkness, the second caravan instead has access to the Valka Spear. Each kill adds a charge to the spear, allowing you to cast chain lightning attacks upon your foes. In some cases, you can use this to merely chip away a point of damage to get a killing blow, but if enemies are in the right formation, it can do widespread damage across multiple units. You have to pay close attention to the position of your own party members, or you can unwittingly do more harm to yourself. Another key difference with the second party comes in the flow of battles. Many of your encounters against the warped creatures in the darkness come in waves, essentially pitting you through 2 to 3 battles on the same battlefield. After each round, you can choose to flee or stay and fight, and opting to stay allows you to reposition and swap out injured party members. If you complete all the waves in an encounter, you'll get a rare piece of equipment, which is vital for the second group. There are no shops to find in the world's twisted remains, so these are your best chances to outfit your team with better gear. Still, it can be hard to see your available party members diminish through wave after wave, leaving you to wonder if sticking it out is the right call. While we've encountered little in the way of bugs, one battle became a real mess as character models increasingly disappeared. Without being able to see our units or the enemy, we were left in a bit of a guessing game and had to brute force our way through a glitch scenario. Thankfully, this issue only came up once during our playthrough. In keeping with every aspect of the game, leveling up is likewise a matter of tough decisions. Not only do individual units need to get kills to qualify for promotion, but you have to spend Renown, which is a limited resource shared by every unit. Plus, in the city, Renown is also used to buy gear and supplies. Expanding the system from previous games, there are now heroic titles as well, which can be applied after a character surpasses level 10. These are unique sub-branches of improved stats, and since each title can only be applied to a single character, it's important to pick titles that complement existing strengths. The trade-offs and scarce resources give a lot of weight to how you spend renown, and it can be particularly brutal when your choices then cause you to lose characters you've invested in so much. It's these choices that you'll make as a leader within each party that have the greatest consequences, as there are so many competing needs and difficult situations to deal with. As the city's under siege, you have to decide whether to let desperate families come into the care of your caravan, deal with arguments among your advisors, choose whether or not to devote men to repairing battered walls, and determine how to deal with traitorous rebels. The results of these decisions may be immediate, but often aren't seen for some time. Upset one faction, and you can lose them from your ranks for good, weakening your position on the battlefield. Make another bad call, and you can lose long-established characters or one of your strongest fighters. At no point should you consider anyone in your party safe. There are moments when the consequences of some decisions can feel like they've come a bit out of left field, but in general, the unpredictability further emphasizes the sense that you have to carefully consider potential outcomes before you act. Since the main caravan is no longer on the trail, managing supplies and morale takes more of a back seat in the Banner Saga 3, but the need to maintain resources eventually comes to a head. As death and darkness close in around the city, constricting ever tighter, the strength of your caravan is tallied, leaving you in a desperate march against time. From here, it's a constant struggle, feeling like you may not make it and knowing full well that failure is a real possibility. There's an excruciating sense of desperation as you cling to any sign of hope in what increasingly feels like a losing battle. In the end, you may not find yourself with the ending you wanted, but it's undeniably the ending you've chosen. Looking back on the consequences of the 15-hour journey will invariably have many rushing back to the beginning to see other outcomes, if not restarting the trilogy entirely to see how much difference earlier decisions might make. The Banner Saga 3 is both heavy and beautiful. The characters that you get to know throughout the trilogy are not invincible heroes, but ragged, flawed, and incredibly vulnerable. It's melancholy and fraught with distress, yet even its darkest moments tend to have some form of silver lining. In every struggle, as you question whether you'll live or die, there's a sense of satisfaction that, at least this, is a life worth living. Easy Allies reviews are made possible by generous viewers just like you. If you like what you see, check out patreon.com/easyallies to help us make more. For just $1 a month, you can gain access to weekly updates, spoiler discussions, and exclusive shows.